and I need to discuss my Toronto Blue Jays. Yes, I am a Blue Jays fan, but I am taking the Blue Jays under 78.5 wins at plus 125 right now at Pinnacle. They are coming off a 74-win season last year, and I will admit, I think this team has improved. Obviously, they brought in Anthony Santander, Andres Jimenez, Max Scherzer. Those are all upgrades. That all of those additions should make this team better. However, you could still make the argument that they're the worst team in the AL East. The Yankees, I know they've lost Garrett Cole to Tommy John surgery, but they're still good. The Red Sox are good. The Orioles are really good. Maybe one of the best offenses in baseball. And then the Tampa Bay Rays, they figure it out every season. They always find a way to hover around. So I think you could still make the argument that the Blue Jays might be the worst team in the division. Here's the thing. Things could go south for this Blue Jays team, and they could become sellers at the deadline. So you have this Vladimir Guerrero Jr. situation hovering over the team. Yes, they could sign him at any point, but maybe he's going to play out the season and walk. Maybe they get to a situation where they might have to trade him, which is... I don't even want to think about that as a Blue Jays fan. It's the same thing with Bo Bichette. He's also in a contract year. You go down the list and you look at all their unrestricted free agents. I talked about Guerrero and Bichette, but you got Chris Bassett, Max Scherzer, Chad Green, and Eric Swanson in the bullpen. So if this team does not get out to a good start, things could go south very quickly and they could just start selling a bunch of guys. And I think that there's more of a chance of that happening than maybe people think. So I think there's actually a little bit of value on their under 78.5 wins. The other thing with Guerrero, and we talked about Guerrero in our futures video going over AL MVP, he can definitely have an elite season, but he's only had 2 elite seasons, or what I would call elite seasons, in his first 6 years in the league. Outside of that, he's had 4 very mediocre seasons. So what Vladdy are we going to get this year? That remains to be seen. And then the same thing with Bo Bichette. He is coming off a dreadful 2024. What's Bo Bichette going to do this year? Then you look at George Springer, who looks like he's fallen off a cliff. Kevin Gausman and Chris Bassett both had down seasons in the starting rotation. What are they going to do? Those guys are aging players as well. So I think even though the Jays have made some upgrades, and I especially like them bringing in Anthony Santander, they've desperately needed a left-handed power bat, but I could see things going south and then this team becoming sellers at the trade deadline. So, sorry, Blue Jays. I'm taking under 78.5 wins. And one last stat that I'll mention, the Jays were awful against the AL East last season. They went 21-31 in 52 games, 10 games under 500 against the division. We could see a similar record this season. As I mentioned, they might be the worst team in the division once again. So that's my take on the Jays. Anyone have any takes on the Blue Jays out of curiosity?
Well, I enjoy feeling your angst about them, Anthony, as you run down the entire lineup about how terrible they are. But I like Ben's point actually about the Brewers being the Tampa Bay Rays of the National League Central, because for years I would want to take the under on the Rays, and because I would look at their lineup and be like, I don't see how they're going to do it, and then they would always go over the number, so I've sworn that off. But when I look at the Jays and I see there's improvement there, but your points about they could be sellers, like if they don't get off to a good start, you could totally see this team just trading, and all of a sudden they would just crash into the end of the season. So that's a very fair point when you're looking at futures, is that understanding the contract situations and whether there's a month or two into the season they're going to be making the decision that, okay, we're out. And if your team suddenly decides they're out, well, it's really tough to predict them to win games.
How about you, Ben? Any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
Yeah, the Jays, I'm pretty torn on the win total. I could see them winning, and if I could bet on them winning 75 to 80 games, I'd bet that. I think Bichette's going to have a bounce back year. I still think it's a little bit more of an outlier with the injuries last year. This guy's not far removed from leading the league in hits for multiple seasons. I don't think he'll be an issue. Santander should provide more protection too for Vlad and him too. The bullpen does worry me. Is Jeff Hoffman closing games now? He had a nice year in Philly, but how is he physically? Chad Green. And then the age of the rotation, too. It looks deep and nice on paper, but it is older now. And Bowden Francis, is he going to resume where he was to finish last season, where he was on a tear, or we haven't seen him put it together for an entire summer? So a lot of question marks there. I won't be betting on them personally, but I'm fascinated to see how the season will go. And year after year, we say it in the AL East, it's just tough to. It sucks that they're in probably the most loaded division once again. Well, in the AL at least, like there's no easy routes to get to the playoffs when you're in there.